Hello everyone, Wayne Motts, the President Emeritus and Historian at the Gettysburg Foundation for a segment of Wall of Faces, Casualties at Gettysburg. And for those of you that have been following the series, and even for those of you that haven't, you need to be, this is a series we're doing at the Gettysburg Foundation on video of one Union and one Confederate soldier on the same part of the battlefield that appear on our Wall of Faces, which is in the Museum of the American Civil War at the Gettysburg National Military Park. There are Union faces and Confederate faces, each of these men killed, wounded, captured in the Battle of Gettysburg. And today, we're out on the first day's battlefield. Over my shoulder is the statue to General John Fulton Reynolds of the Union Army. And if Sarah wants to pan a little bit over here behind me, over this cornfield on the next ridge will be where fighting is on the morning of July 1st between the brigade of Joe Davis. He's the nephew of the President of the Confederacy. He commands Mississippi troops here in the Battle of Gettysburg. And then elements of Cutler's brigade of the 1st Union Army Corps, the first Union soldiers to get up here on the Battle of Gettysburg for the infantry. Of course, General Buford's command is out here at first. And today, our Confederate subject here on this part of the battlefield, fighting with the 42nd Mississippi Volunteer Infantry Regiment of Joe Davis's brigade, will be Reverend Thomas D. Witherspoon. Thomas D. Witherspoon is a chaplain of the 42nd Mississippi Volunteer Infantry Regiment, and these units, Union and Confederate, had chaplains during the Battle of Gettysburg. Many of them are right on the front lines. Of course, we know they're always helping the wounded and doing other tasks related to their duties as a chaplain, and also undertake many things I think that people probably would not be aware of, such as like being regimental postmaster. So Reverend Witherspoon is out here with the 42nd Mississippi Volunteer Infantry Regiment on July 1st, 1863. He's born in 1836 in Greensboro, Alabama. He attends local schools. He goes to the University of Alabama, and then he moves to Oxford, Mississippi. So he is at the University of Mississippi, attends Ole Miss, gets a AB degree in 1856. Then he goes to South Carolina and graduates from a Presbyterian seminary. So Chaplain Witherspoon is a graduate of the Presbyterian seminary. When the Civil War breaks out, he is in Oxford, Mississippi. And the first duty he will do, what he'll volunteer to do, is actually as a rifle private of Company G, 11th Mississippi Volunteer Infantry Regiment, called the Lamar Rifles. And then he is appointed chaplain of the 2nd Mississippi, and he is appointed chaplain, which he is at Gettysburg, in the 42nd Mississippi Volunteer Infantry Regiment. Now, on July 5th, 1863, after the battle, he is attending wounded, and he has his own account about his capture on July 5th, 1863. This is what he says, quote, "I was captured in the afternoon of a beautiful Sabbath day, the 5th of July, 1863, in a hospital tent on the battlefield of Gettysburg, in the midst of a religious service, surrounded by wounded on every hand, to whom I ministered, and at whose urgent solicitation I had volunteered to remain when the enemy was within our lines." He'll go to Fort McHenry. He'll spend several months in confinement at Fort McHenry, but as a chaplain, he will be exchanged. He will end the Civil War at Appomattox. In 1866, of course, he will continue his pastoral duties, and he will die in 1898 in Louisville, Kentucky. Today, Reverend Witherspoon is buried in Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky, and there's some famous folks in there. So if you're near Louisville, you get to Louisville, be sure to go to Cave Hill Cemetery. You can visit Reverend Witherspoon's grave. You can also see the grave of Union artillerist Andrew Cowan on July 3rd, Colonel Sanders of Kentucky Chicken fame, and Muhammad Ali, all buried in the Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky. Thomas D. Witherspoon, the chaplain of the 42nd Mississippi Infantry, fighting here on July 1st, and they're up against elements of Cutler's brigade. One of the regiments that Joe Davis's brigade will be up against will be the 147th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment, the subject of our next sketch. Now, we didn't move very far, but we came over here on McPherson's Ridge, close to where I was just speaking for the 42nd Mississippi Volunteer Infantry Regiment, and I am behind or on the east side of the 147th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment, a unit that comes from Oswego, New York. And this unit of Lysander Cutler's Brigade of the 1st Union Army Corps will be directly up against Joe Davis's brigade and very close by to the 42nd Mississippi and Reverend Witherspoon that we just talked about as our Confederate Wall of Faces subject. Our Union Wall of Faces subject today is Franklin Halsey. Now, Halsey has an interesting history, and what's also interesting about it is if you go into the Museum of the American Civil War in the Visitor Center at Gettysburg, you will see his original carte de visite, the original photograph that was used to place on the Wall of Faces inside the museum. So the original is in there, and you'll want to go visit in the first day's galleries to talk about it. Now, what do we know about Franklin Halsey? We know that he is from Mexico, New York, and that is in Oswego County, New York, north of Syracuse, south of Lake Ontario. And the 1860 census actually lists Franklin Halsey as a laborer. He enlists on August 20th, 1862, and he is married 5 days later to Sarah E. Macomber. And he's promoted to corporal in May of 1863, and he is a corporal in the 147th New York in the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, on the morning of July 1st, this unit is out on the next ridge where we were just filming out where Witherspoon is. That unit gets almost annihilated here in the Battle of Gettysburg. Orders are given for the unit to withdraw. The major is shot in the throat. The unit is not able to get withdrawn. General Wadsworth is out here with one of his aides, and he sees the 147th in an exposed position, and he asks his aide, what is that still doing out there? Go get them out of there. And eventually they're going to get orders to withdraw, but not until many of their men are killed, wounded, or captured. You can see the loss right here on the monument. 301 men of the 147th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment killed, wounded, or captured out of 380 taken into action on the morning of July 1st, 1863, Cutler's Brigade versus Davis. And Franklin Halsey is one of those men. He's killed in action fighting along the railroad cut out here on the first day. His wife, Sarah, will get a pension of $8 a month back to when he was killed, but then she's going to remarry in 1864. His body was never recovered here. Now, there is an excerpt from the Mexico Independent from Oswego County, New York, a letter that is written to Halsey's wife describing this. And it's dated July 7, 1863. Talks about his death. So in many cases, these families, the only way that they get word about what happened to their relative is if another member of the unit writes in and said, hey, I know what happened here. Here's what he says, quote, I'm very sorry to announce to you the death of your husband. He was shot in the first day's fight on the 1st of July. No one knows where he's buried. Dear madam, you must look to heaven to comfort you, and there you will again meet your beloved husband. He fell nobly fighting for his country, and the country's honor will be his reward. Daniel L. Antry, 147th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment, July 7th, 1863 at Gettysburg, written to Franklin Halsey's wife. As the letter states, Halsey's body was never recovered. A casualty at Gettysburg, killed at Gettysburg, and his body not recovered. I hope you've enjoyed this Wall of Faces segment out on the first day's battle, July 1st, 1863 at Gettysburg, with Reverend Thomas D. Witherspoon of the 42nd Mississippi Volunteer Infantry Regiment, the chaplain of the 42nd Mississippi of Joe Davis's brigade, and Franklin N. Halsey of the 147th New York Lysander Cutler's Brigade of the 1st Union Army Corps, fighting both here on July 1st, 1863. One dying in 1863, one living until 1898, Reverend Witherspoon, and dying in Louisville, Kentucky. I hope you enjoy these videos. Please like and share them around. And thank you for all the support at the Gettysburg Foundation, the Gettysburg National Military Park, and Eisenhower National Historic Sites philanthropic partner.